Namaste. Welcome you all. I'm Rupak Bhandari. I'm Assistant Professor in Department of General Practice and Emergency Medicine, BPKIHS, Dharan. Today we are discussing on the topic management of snake bite in primary care setting. So let's start. So in our Hindu culture, we see snakes are worshipped as God. Nag Panchami is a day in which we worship snakes. So we can see Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu with snake. So we worship snake as a god. But the snake bite, it is very prevalent in our area. So let's take an overview of snake bite. So it is a neglected public health problem, and it has ecological, occupational, and climatic hazards. And in rural areas and in many tropical and subtropical countries, snake bite is more prevalent. And the most commonly affected people are farmers and plantation workers. So the lack of proper knowledge about the first aid and delayed presentation to the health center leads to the numerous death and chronic debility in the victims of snake bite. So talking about the burden of snake bite worldwide, there are around 5 million snake bites cases per year, out of which 125,000 deaths occur annually. And in Nepal, the incidence is around 1200 per year, and the mortality is around 160 per 100,000 population per year. So the common venomous snakes found in South Asia are the krait, the cobra, king cobra, the Russell viper, the pit viper, and the saw-scaled viper. Commonly, krait and cobra are common in Nepal. So, talking about the systemic signs and symptoms of snake envenomation, the general symptom is anxiety and fear related to the snake bite. It is prevalent even in non-poisonous snake envenomation. So, the other general symptoms are nausea, vomiting, malaise, abdominal pain, weakness, and drowsiness. So the cardiovascular symptoms are the visual disturbances, dizziness, fainting and collapse, and hypotension and cardiac arrhythmias are deadly complications. So coming to neurological envenomation signs, there are the drowsiness, paresthesia, ptosis, external ophthalmoplegia, the nasal voice or aphonia, and regurgitation of food and difficulty in swallowing are the late features of neurological envenomation. And the main features are respiratory and generalized paralysis. So in this picture, we can see the ptosis of a lady. And the second picture shows the broken neck sign, where the muscles of the neck are flaccid and the patient cannot hold the neck. And the third picture shows the patient cannot protrude the tongue. So if these features are present, then it's high time we should protect the airway of the patient and intubate as early as possible. So the other hematological features are the procoagulant enzymes that are present in the snake venom. Those activate the intravascular coagulation. That leads to the consumption coagulopathy, and there is spontaneous bleeding and clotting disturbances in the body. So this leads to the capillary leak syndrome, where we can find the conjunctival chemosis and pulmonary edema, and the bleeding and clotting disorders, which leads to the prolonged bleeding. It may be from the fang marks or venipuncture site, or there may be spontaneous systemic bleeding, such as gum bleed, epistaxis, intracerebral or subarachnoid bleed. We may find petechiae, purpura, and ecchymosis over the skin of the victim. So we can see the fang marks, and there is continued bleeding from the bitten site, and we can see the blisters and ecchymosis over the bitten site, and we can see the whole of the limb is involved here. So the conjunctival chemosis looks like this, and there may be mucosal bleeding, and there may be the neck rigidity and headache related to the subarachnoid hemorrhage, secondary to snake envenomation. So other clinical features are skeletal muscle breakdown, which leads to pain and stiffness over the muscles. The pain on passive stretching is the early sign of skeletal muscle breakdown. So this may lead to myoglobinuria, hyperkalemia, and acute kidney injury. So in the renal complications are hematuria, hemoglobinuria, myoglobinuria, and it leads to oliguria or anuria. So the clinical effects of snake bite can be grouped into different syndromes so that we can identify which species of snake has bitten the victim. So in the syndrome 1, there is a local inflammation such as swelling with bleeding or clotting disturbances. It's common in Viperidae species. The syndrome 2, it leads to the local envenoming if with bleeding and clotting disturbances, shock or acute kidney injury, the suspected snake is Russell's viper. But if the local envenomation is with bilateral ptosis, external ophthalmoplegia, facial paralysis, and dark brown urine, it is Russell viper. In syndrome 3, there is local envenoming with paralysis. The suspected snake is cobra or king cobra. In syndrome 4, there is paralysis with minimal or no local envenoming. So when it is bitten on the land while sleeping on the ground, the culprit is crake. And when bitten in the sea or some freshwater lakes, so the culprit is sea snake. In syndrome 5, there is paralysis with dark brown urine with acute kidney injury. So if bitten on land, it is Russell viper. If bitten on land while sleeping indoors, it's crake. If bitten in the sea or lakes, it is sea snake. Now coming to the first aid management of the victim bitten by a snake. So the patient after being bitten by the snake are very anxious and fearful. So first and foremost, we should reassure the victim of the snake bite. So we should attempt to delay the systemic absorption of the venom. And we should preserve the life and prevent complications before the patient can receive medical attention. And we should control the distressing or dangerous early symptoms of envenoming. And we must arrange the early transport to the medical care center. So above all, aim to do no harm. So we can see in these pictures that the tight tourniquet has resulted in the necrosis of the limb. So never apply the tight tourniquet, which can be limb threatening or even sometimes life threatening. So it should never be done. So how should we immobilize the patient? So for immobilization, we should bandage the extremities from distal part. So we can see in the first picture that the patient is being bitten on the shin, whereas the roll is being applied from the distal part itself. So from distal to upper part, the bandaging should be done. So the bandaging should be tight enough to stop the lymphatic channel and loose enough so that the two fingers can pass in between the bandaging. So another mode of bandaging is pressure bandaging, where we put the gauze over the bitten part and then roll it by bandaging, and we should splint the limb. So what if the victim is being bitten over the body or over the neck or over the head area? So in that scenario, we should keep the patient as immobile as possible. So we should not bandage in those cases. So the volunteer motorcycle transportation is common in Nepal. We can see that the victim is being sandwiched between the two volunteers by the motorbike. This is commonly applicable where the immediate ambulance is not available. It is very popular in Nepalese setup. So do it right. R means reassure the victim. I immobilize the whole patient, especially the bitten limb. GH is get to the hospital quickly, and T, keep talking to the victim and tell the doctor about the signs that developed during the transport, such as drooping of eyelids and continuous bleeding from the bitten side. So as soon as the patient reaches the hospital, we should do the rapid primary clinical assessment and resuscitation of the patient using the ABCDE approach. That means airway, breathing, circulation, disability, and exposure and environmental control. So talking about the airway, the indications of early intubation are imminent respiratory arrest with severe respiratory distress or inadequate breathing, where there is neck muscle weakness with shallow respiration, or if there is paradoxical breathing, or if there is secretions pulling in the pharynx with a loss of gag or cough reflex. In those cases, we should intubate the patient early. And if there is upper airway obstruction with stridor secondary to the anaphylaxis or angioedema, then also we should intubate the patient. So talking about the breathing, if there is respiratory paralysis, we can try anticholinesterase, but we should not delay the assisted ventilation in those patients. So talking about circulation, if there is shock or myocardial damage, then we should correct the hypovolemia and consider vasopressor drops. In hypotension with bradycardia, try atropine. So in hemostatic abnormalities, we should keep the patient rested in bed to avoid trauma, and transfusion of blood products such as fresh frozen plasma, cryoprecipitate, or whole blood or platelet-rich plasma as required. So if there is acute kidney injury, we should go for conservative treatment, or if required, renal replacement therapy. If there is severe local envenoming, surgical intervention is required, and we should use prophylactic broad-spectrum antibiotics. There are some pertinent questions that we should ask to the snake bite victims. The first question is, in which part of the body were you bitten? So if the victim is being bitten over the head and neck area, then the venom circulates over the body quicker than if the victim is being bitten over the extremities. The second question is, when were you bitten and what were you doing when you were bitten? If the patient is being bitten by the snake while sleeping, then most probably the snake might be krait. And if the patient is being bitten at the paddy field, probably the snake is cobra. So where is the snake that bit you? And the fourth question is, what did it look like? Or did anyone take the picture? So if there is the picture of the snake, then it helps to identify the species of the snake. And fifth question is, how are you feeling now? If there are any signs and symptoms of envenomation or not. So what are the early clues that the patient has severe envenoming? The first is, the snake is identified as a very dangerous one, such as krait or cobra. So there is widely spaced fang marks or evidence of multiple strikes. So if there is early extension of the local swelling from the site of the bite, or if there is early tender enlargement of the local lymph nodes, then we should suspect there is severe envenoming with a snake bite. And if there is early systemic envenoming, the early systemic symptoms are the cardiovascular collapse. The patient lands in hypotension and shock. There is early ptosis and ophthalmoplegia with neurological features. And there is early spontaneous bleeding, hemorrhagic manifestations. And there is no urine passed since the bite. The patient lands up in acute kidney injury. There is passage of dark brown or black urine. So this also relates to acute kidney injury, and hemoglobinuria and myoglobinuria. So these are the features of early systemic symptoms. Now coming to the investigations in snake envenomation, the 20-minute whole blood clotting test is a bedside simple test which can detect if there is hemorrhagic manifestations of snake envenomation or not. For that, we draw around 3 ml of blood in a sterile container and keep it for 20 minutes, and in 20 minutes we check if the blood has clotted or not. If the blood has clotted, the test is negative. If the blood remains unclotted, then the test is positive. And it is one of the signs that we should start the anti-snake venom in the patient. The other tests we carry out are prothrombin time and activated partial thromboplastin time, which are increased in hemorrhagic invenomation. So other investigations we do are hematocrit, white cell count, and platelet count, and peripheral smear. The plasma creatinine and urea level for hemoglobinuria, myoglobinuria, and acute kidney injury. The aminotransferase level and creatine kinase level if there is skeletal muscle breakdown, and hyperkalemia and metabolic acidosis, and we should also look for the ECG. So what is anti-snake venom? So it is the immunoglobulin purified from the plasma of horse or sheep, which is hyperimmunized with the venoms of one or more snake species. So this is polyvalent anti-snake venom that's commonly available in Nepal. So the polyvalent anti-snake venom is raised against the venoms of 4 species, particularly cobra, common crate, Russell viper, and saw-scale viper. So what are the indications to start anti-snake venom in a snake bite victim? If there is evidence of neurotoxicity such as ptosis, external ophthalmoplegia, broken neck sign, or respiratory difficulty. If there is evidence of coagulopathy with evidence such as positive 20-minute whole blood clotting test, or visible spontaneous systemic bleeding, or gum bleeding, mucosal bleeding, or if there is myoglobinuria and hemoglobinuria, and if there is rapid extension of the local swelling where more than half of the limb is swollen, and if there is evidence of cardiovascular collapse such as shock and hypotension, if there is evidence of acute kidney injury. Traditionally, acute kidney injury is an indication of anti-venom therapy. However, the acute kidney injury in absence of hematotoxic manifestations is highly unlikely. So talking about the dosing of the anti-snake venom, the initial dose is 10 vials. So each vial is reconstituted with 10 ml of the reconstituent solution provided with the pack, and so the 10 vials make 100 ml of the solution. So that 100 ml is mixed with 100 to 400 ml of normal saline or dextrose water, and the solution is given over 1 hour. So the infusion rate is 2 ml per minute. So if the neurological signs deteriorate, then we should repeat the dose. We should repeat 5 vials of antivenom, that is 50 ml of reconstituted antivenom at the rate of 2 ml per minute. So we should not repeat the antivenom if the neurological signs persist or improves, and it should be repeated only if the neurological sign deteriorates. And for the hematotoxic envenoming, the same dose is given as that of neurotoxic envenoming, and in 6 hours we repeat the 20-minute whole blood clotting test or the prothrombin time or activated partial thromboplastin time. If the 20-minute whole blood clotting test is still abnormal and the coagulation tests are abnormal, then we should repeat the 5 vials of antivenom, that is 50 ml of reconstituted antivenom at the rate of 2 ml per minute. So we should remember that the snake injects the same dose of venom in children as well as adults. So the dose of antivenom in children as well as the adult is same. So now talking about the antivenom reaction, because it is the reconstituted immunoglobulin from serum of horse or sheep, so the antivenom reaction is common with anti-snake venom. So the 3 common reactions are early anaphylactic reactions, which can occur in minutes or 2-3 hours. So pyrogenic reaction, which can occur in 1 to 2 hours after providing anti-snake venom, and late reaction or serum sickness reaction, which can occur up to 10 days of giving of anti-snake venom. So for treatment of anaphylactic reaction, we should inject intramuscular adrenaline 0.1% with the initial dose of 0.5 ml per mg. So in children it is 0.1 mg per kg body weight, and along with it we should provide oxygen via face mask, up to 6 to 8 liters of oxygen, and fluid bolus with a normal saline should be given in adults up to 1 liter, and in children with 20 ml per kg. and the dose can be repeated if still the patient is hypotensive. And the antihistaminics such as chlorpheniramine maleate, the dose is 10 mg in adults and 0.2 mg per kg in children. So hydrocortisone intravenously in adults 100 milligram and in children 2 mg per kg should be given. And if there is bronchospasm, we can provide nebulized salbutamol. So for the treatment of pyrogenic reaction, we do not interrupt the antivenom unless the patient is hypotensive. And we can provide the injection paracetamol for pyrogenic reaction. And if the patient has hypotension, then we should stop the antivenom and rapidly infuse the normal saline up to 1 to 2 liters in adults. So in presence of cardiovascular shock, we should stop the antivenom and we should treat as anaphylaxis. So for the treatment of serum sickness, the antihistaminics such as phenramine maleate is given in adults 25 milligram twice daily for 3 days, and in children 0.25 mg per kg per day in 3 divided doses. So if there is no response to antihistaminics, prednisolone should be given in adults 5 milligram 6 hourly for 7 days, and in children 0.7 milligram per kg in divided doses for 7 days. So the benefits of blood clotting factors, it's recommended to speed up the restoration of the normal hemostasis in patients who are already treated with antivenom, and for the conservative treatment of the bleeding or blood clotting disturbances when antivenom is not available. So the risk fatalities possibly related to the reactions and thrombosis. The benefits of antibiotics are for treating the secondary and primary bite wound infections, and the benefits of renal replacement therapy is life-saving in patients with acute kidney injury, and assisted ventilation is life-saving in those with respiratory failure. So the use of anticholinesterase such as neostigmine with atropine, it is beneficial in those patients in whom the postsynaptic neurotoxicity occurs, such as cobra or Australian death adders. So after administration of neostigmine and atropine, there is a rapid improvement in neuromuscular function. So the risks are the muscarinic side effects and cholinergic crisis. The dosage of atropine is 0.3 to 0.6 milligram IV, and followed by neostigmine 0.01 milligram per kg up to 0.5 mg IV or IM every 30 minutes until the neurotoxic features improve. In the first picture, we can see the prominent ptosis. After administration of neostigmine with atropine, we can find the ptosis is resolved rapidly. So the traditional first aid methods such as the wound incision, suction of the wound, or tight tourniquet, and topical herbal medicines, cow dung, or electric shocks are strictly prohibited, and they are harmful and useless, and they should never be recommended in snake bite. So let's talk something about the government policy on snake bite. So first is making the snake bite reportable. The second is developing the snake bite management program, and third is standard treatment guidelines for snake bite victims, and ensuring the production and supply of the adequate quantity and quality of the anti-snake venom, and training the health professionals at all levels for management of snake bite, and the continuous research. So starting with the community level to the tertiary referral hospital. So in the village or community, there should be infrastructure such as ambulance for transportation, and the health aid personnel, health workers, they should be trained on a regular basis. And in primary health center, there should be basic emergency care and resuscitation, airway and ambu bag, anti-venom administration, and the personnel such as doctor and nurse should be standby. And in district hospital setting, the infrastructure should have the blood bank, the ICU, and surgical setup, and the personnel should be physician and surgeon. We should tackle with the snake envenomation. And in the tertiary referral hospital, there should have the provision of dialysis and ICU, and the surgical setup, the coagulation lab, and the physician, surgeon, nephrologist, and anesthesiologist should be trained. and in this way we can strengthen the health system. Okay, now coming to the preventive strategies. So how can we prevent the snake bite? So first and foremost, the community-based education program should be given to prevent the snake bite. And since the snakes prefer dry places during the rainy season, so we should avoid the snakes from entering into the house. It is applicable only when we cut the grasses and bushes around the house. We should keep the area clean, and we should avoid the wood piles and bamboo from the household, and we should close the door and windows properly so that the snake cannot enter into the house, and advise people not to sleep on the floor. So if that is unavoidable, then we can use the mosquito net, which should be well tucked under the mattress so that the snake cannot enter inside. We should use the light where we walk outside the house so that if the snake is present, it is visible from ahead. And we should take extra care while walking or walking in places where the snakes are likely to hide. And while using the boots and shoe, we should be cautious because the snakes may be hidden inside the shoe or boot. And while walking in the dark, use a torch light or with a stick so that the snakes will move away. And we should never play with the snake or irritate the snake. If we do not provoke the snake do not bite. And we should never insert the hand into the long grasses or tree holes. We never know, the snake might be hidden inside. And while wearing the shoes or clothes, we should check before, because the snakes might be hiding over there. So prevention is the mother of cure. So let's summarize. So in summary, the first aid and transport to the hospital are the foremost important parts. The rapid clinical assessment and resuscitation in the hospital as soon as the patient arrives, and the detailed clinical assessment and the species diagnosis with pertinent investigations and lab tests. And we should provide the anti-snake venom treatment where needed, and observe for the response to antivenom, and decide if the further doses of antivenom are required. And supportive and ancillary treatments must be provided, and treatment of the bitten part should be taken care of, rehabilitation and treatment of the chronic complications, and advising the preventive measures, so how to avoid the future bites. So these are the references. Thank you so much for your kind attention.